Hi, I'm Emily Jacob, and this is M's R&R, Tips for Rescue and Resilience, so that you can navigate these uncertain times and any type of times. Rescue so that when feeling anxious or worried, even flat out panicked, can self-rescue ourselves, and there's nothing more powerful than knowing that we can do that. And resilience so that we don't need to rescue as often. So today I want to talk to you about sleep. I'm wearing my favourite t-shirt. I identify as tired, which I think is quite apt to be wearing whilst talking about sleep. Sleep, I think, is the most important thing in all of the things that I have been talking about. Obviously, breathing, very important, must breathe. But how we breathe, not as important as getting good quality sleep, getting enough of it and getting good quality sleep. And yet sleep is so difficult sometimes to get, even though we know it's really important. And many of us have our inner teenager inside that never wants to get out of bed, can't stand the alarm in the morning, and really just wants to curl up under the covers for a nap most of the waking hours. Certainly that's me. I identify as tired. But getting sleep is so important, and we don't, as humans, tend to get enough of it. The way our societies have evolved can make it quite difficult. We no longer go to sleep when the sun sets and wake up as the sun rises. And our circadian clock, the internal clock by which everything kind of regulates in the body, just can get out of rhythm very easily. But we all know, because we've all experienced it, that after a poor night's sleep, everything the next day feels harder. Even if we're not burdened by worry or anxiety of any type, everything just feels harder. Our bodies feel more sluggish. Our brains don't feel like they're firing on all cylinders. And not having enough sleep makes things difficult. And when we are suffering from worries or anxieties, not having enough sleep just makes those worries and anxieties feel so much bigger. They can just grow and expand out of all proportion. So suddenly spilling some coffee can feel like the end of the world, whereas when we've had enough sleep, we can shrug our shoulders and go, oh, clumsy, and wipe the coffee up. So we know it's really important that we get enough sleep. We all know how horrible it feels not to have had enough sleep, and yet we don't often do very much to make sure that we do get enough sleep. And I really would like for you to start prioritizing your sleep in ways that you haven't been yet. And even if sleep has been something that you have been eternally searching for, and you think, no, hang on a minute, I have been, I encourage you to get even more scientific about what it is that is impacting your sleep and how you might put in place strategies to improve it. Pretty much, I describe everything I do in my day as being targeted towards getting a good night's sleep. From the moment I wake up to the end of the day, I'm thinking about everything I do in terms of what effect it will have on my sleep. Not in a really kind of, I'm not going to do that because it's going to have detrimental impact in this way, but just in the sense of knowing that if I have an orange juice in the afternoon, the excess sugar in that orange juice is going to mean that it's much harder for my body to fall asleep in the evening. I know that if I have a glass of wine at night, I might get to sleep, but I also know that the trade-off will be that I'm more likely to wake up at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and therefore not get the quality of sleep all the way through. And so And that might not be true for you. You might find that actually you can have a coffee after your meal and it has absolutely no impact on your sleep. I know that I can't have a coffee until after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. No, after, not until after, but if I have one after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to still mean that I can't get to sleep in the evening. And so there are so many different factors that affect our sleep. There's a whole bunch of activities in the period just before we go to sleep, which can have an impact. Then there's what we do during the sleeping hours if we're not sleeping, that will have an impact. And then there's how we spend the days up until the sleeping hours again. So it's kind of in three parts, and then they're not, evidently they're not equal parts. So in the first couple of hours before going to sleep, what we should be doing is activities that are winding down our systems, that are preparing our body for rest, that are encouraging our body to rest. So this is where we don't want to eat the kinds of foods that might keep us up, or give us a dodgy stomach. That's why they say, if cheese gives you really bad dreams, don't eat it. Beans are not necessarily the right kind of food to eat for dinner. Wine, alcohol can have impacts. So be thinking about the kind of nutrition you're putting in your body for in the evenings and for dinner. But it's also what kind of activities we're doing. So if you are the kind of person that would get a lot of exercise in the evenings, you might find that that's kind of created an awful lot of energy and adrenaline coursing around your system, which is not conducive to the cortisol we need to get us to sleep. So what you want to be doing is more calming exercise in the evening, something like yoga or some go for a walk, but nothing that's going to get your heart pumping fast. You don't want that in the couple of hours before bed. Early evening, probably fine, 5-6 o'clock, but depending on when your bedtime is, and we'll come to that, you don't want anything too energetic in the couple of hours before bed. And also in terms of screen time, and I think everybody now knows about this, but we don't necessarily do anything about it. But that light from our mobile phones, from the TV, from the laptop, it's not doing our brains any good just before sleep. So be switching it off, using the blue shade on your phones if you need to, and be reading an actual book as opposed to a screen book if you can. Doing any activities that don't involve screen time, and making sure that if you are continuing to watch the next episode of what you're watching on Netflix, that maybe it's not something that's going to keep you agitated and on edge before you go to bed. So be making sure that you are as calm as possible, and you have rested the parts of your body that need to be rested before bed. Now, when you are going to bed, and if you do find it difficult to go to sleep, there are lots of things that tools that you can turn to. So you could meditate, you could do some sort of bedtime yoga that's designed to help you to sleep. You can listen to sleep stories, which are full of the kind of language that kind of make sure that you've fall asleep before the story has finished, which I actually find really frustrating because I was enjoying the story, but I've fallen asleep during it. And you can just sort of do your breathing in bed. Just do some 5-7 breathing or some deep belly breathing. Connect in with your body and breathe. if you find it difficult to sleep, the last thing you should do is ask yourself, why can't you fall asleep? One of the things that is, our brains are actually really very literal beings. And they don't understand the instruction to fall asleep, because what exactly does falling asleep involve? Are we falling? We're not falling at all. So our brains is like, oh, I don't know what you mean by you can't fall asleep, but I don't know what that action involves. I would like to do as you request, but I do not know what that involves. Instead, you can say to yourself, sleep is coming, sleep is coming, sleep is coming, because it is, and it will come. If you give it that instruction. So that's the going to sleep part. Then we have the when asleep part. So this is again where I get, so lots of people suffer from insomnia. And the reason I mostly know that is because they tell me on social media that they're not sleeping. I see their Facebook posts about how, they're part of the 3 o'clock club, or I see the Twitter posts of the same ilk, and they are switching on, they're not able to sleep, and they're switching on their phone, and they're posting about the fact that they can't sleep. So they are waking their brain up with that light. And so it's of course, it's going to be difficult to go to sleep. So, and I know many of you might be struggling from insomnia and not doing that. And you're saying, yeah, but it still happens. And yes, it does. Insomnia sucks terribly. And it can be caused by a lot of things. And certainly in working with my clients and in my own experience, a lot of the time sleep is not a fun thing at all. It can be full of night terrors. And nightmares, and often actually you don't want to get to sleep because those night terrors and nightmares are going to happen. And so the waking up from those parts of sleep that can be really difficult, or the parts of your body and brain not wanting to go to sleep because of what might be awaiting, really needs a lot of calming and a lot of practice and consistency in some of these techniques as well. But if you do wake up and you've maybe had a nightmare, or you have just had a sudden thought of, oh, I must remember to post that letter, then the thing is you want to do, first of all, is orient yourself to where you are now. So have something by the side of your bed if you're subject to terrors that really kind of you find comforting, that you can look at and it can reassure you, something that maybe you can touch and feel that reassures you, like a soft blanket or something, that cuddly toy, that can reassure you and soothe you straight away, and ground yourself into now and not that terrible nightmare. If it's something that you've forgotten and your brain has suddenly decided to let you know in the middle of the night, have a pen and paper close to the bed so you can write it down. Your brain won't let you go back to sleep whilst it's still trying to remember what it had remembered. So it needs to know that it's being handled. So write it down. It knows it's being handled. It will rest again. And actually, if you are suffering from terrors, actually writing down a little bit of what if you remember anything from it, if you just get it out, write it down, and then go back to sleep, you can often find that actually that particular terror leaves you alone. So in the middle of the night, if you are waking up, there's a couple of things to do. If you do want to get up and sort of stretch your legs and move a bit, that's okay. Don't switch on any lights. Same if you need to go to the loo or something. Try not to switch on any lights, or just keep the lights as dim as possible, so that your brain doesn't get woken up and tricked into thinking the sun has come out. And actually backing up to insomnia as well. If you're finding it really difficult to sleep, it's best to, to do some reading in bed, not with a backlit screen. But again, if you're staying awake for longer than about 20 minutes when you're trying to do that, get up and move around and go and do that reading somewhere else until you feel tired enough to go back again to bed. What we don't want to do is make the bed a place of wakefulness. We want to make the bed connected to a place of sleepfulness in our head. So we're anchoring an experience and the place together. And then it's morning and you wake, and hopefully you wake refreshed. Personally, I would love to know how that's possible. I don't know if I've ever woken refreshed. I can blame my medication now, but I'm not sure that I ever remember waking refreshed. Perhaps somebody who's a sleep expert will be watching this and going, maybe there's something you can help me with. But so once you wake, it's better to wake straight away ish, to get yourself into the rhythm for waking. It can be really helpful to get up and stretch and brush your teeth, and then go in and doing, switching on the kettle and doing those sorts of things. But continually pressing the alarm to doze pretty much trains your body into not waking and finding the wakefulness harder. And for lots of people, untraining from the dozing the snoozing could be quite difficult. So give yourself a break as you're going through trying to change your sleep habits. They don't change overnight. The body is a bit like one of those really big ocean liners that, if you're trying to turn it around, it has to travel a lot of miles to change direction before it has. So be kind to yourself along this process. And I always say to my clients, kind of keep a sleep diary. So be noting down when you wake up how well did you sleep, what do you think the quality of the sleep was, how long do you think you slept for, and then be keeping a note of the things that you're eating, drinking, doing throughout the day, and whether or not you have a nap in the afternoon, to kind of keep track of all the different factors that are going into the quality and the length of your sleep. And just treat it as experiment you and see how you're doing. Review often to adjust any of the strategies, and I hope that you find that you can get better quality sleep by taking quite a scientific approach to the different things that you're doing in the day that contribute to the kind of sleep you get. So if I just explain a little bit about my sleep practices, that might help. They're not perfect by a long chalk, and I kind of know where I go wrong often, and I'm sometimes, I just kind of have the bargain with myself. Actually, I want this experience of drinking this wine right now, and I know that it's going to have an impact on my sleep. It's a conscious choice, and that's the wonderful thing about being human is we have this choice to make decisions between doing something or not doing something. Better when those decisions can be informed. So I tend to wake without an alarm now. I tend to only put an alarm on when I absolutely need to wake up and don't necessarily trust that I will. And the reason that I don't put an alarm on is because the last sort of REM sleep that you get in the night is kind of the best for you. And if you lose that, then it's, you know, it's no good. So I want to let myself sleep until I wake up naturally, and I get around 8 hours ish. Sometimes my body wants 9, sometimes my body will actually wake me up with 7, but I tend to find if I've had a 7-hour sleep, I will definitely need a nap in the afternoon. And often I feel when I've woken up that I could have stayed asleep for another 2 hours. And that feels like maybe my body is too attuned to the sunshine than it should be. And actually it wants longer. So I'm kind of experimenting with how black my blackout my room can be. So awake, brush my teeth, do some stretching. My body needs to stretch more than it does. And I do drink coffee. A lot of people don't have, you know, would give up coffee to maximize sleep, but I love coffee, and I find that because I do probably need the extra couple of REM cycles that I'm getting, that coffee kind of helps me over that hump. Do the day, go into the evening, and I try to switch off the television by about 9:30, and spend the last half an hour or so reading. Now, that's not always the case because I'm a bit of a binge watcher of TV. So suddenly I realize it's past 10 o'clock and I must go to bed. So I'm going straight from screen into sleep. And I know that the impact of that means that the quality of my sleep is not as good. But I don't drink coffee after my morning coffees, which are finished by 11 o'clock in the morning. And I hardly drink alcohol more than once a week now, because it's just not worth the impact on my sleep and on the way I am the next day. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight about how to get hold of sleep, which is basic human function that we need just as much as we need to breathe, and that we need to stay hydrated, and we need to eat, we need to sleep, and yet is something that we can find so elusive sometimes. So I wish you all a good night's rest, and see you for the next one of these. If this was helpful at all, please share. A bit longer than usual. Hope that it's been helpful. Thank you very much for watching.